All right, guys, welcome to the channel. Today, I'm gonna start telling my story and how I got sentenced to 23 years in prison. I've been meaning to do this on here, but I've been putting it off for the longest time because it's really hard for me to tell this story. So you guys have to bear with me. Um, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So you know, back in like the mid 2000s, I'd fell into a pretty bad addiction to painkillers and started getting into like the whole OxyContin thing. And make a long story short, I started getting in trouble with the law. Uh, made caught serious offenses and went to prison a couple times, and ended up having two strikes on my record under the California three strikes law. So I had two strikes on my record. And then so let's go to 2012. I'm out. I'm on parole. I got busted at this hotel room with my girlfriend, and I had a little bit of dope on me. I had like a gram of heroin, and at that time it was still a felony, so I got charged with a felony and sent to state prison for 16 months. So there I was in prison. I had about 4 months left at the time, about 4 months before I got out, and then my correctional counselor calls me down to his office out of the blue, and so I'm like, oh, what's this about? I go down there. Before he even says anything, I look at on the desk, and there's a paper there, a piece of paper, and it says notification of warrant, Placer County, Penal Code 459, and my heart just sank. My life just changed right then and there. It was probably the worst day of my life because 459 is a burglary, and that is a strike. So that is a third strike. So I know now that I'm looking at life. So yeah, worst day of my life. So when you're in places like this, especially like where I was at a reception center in prison. You can't get on the phone and call anyone. Like I'm stuck in a cell all day. Like you're so powerless over stuff, and like you just have nothing else to do but to stress out about this stuff, this new information, and there's no way to really like deal with the stress. So yeah, I started freaking out. I filed a petition for trial. So like when you're in custody and you have a warrant happen like this, you can file for them to come pick you up so you can go address the warrant rather than waiting until your release date and then have them pick you up, right? So I did that. Off I go. They send me to the county. It was Placer County. Touchdown there. Go to court. I get arraigned, and they just said the charge, but they didn't say anything about like a third strike. But I still knew that it's a third strike. It's not like they're not going to know that. A couple of days later, my public defender calls me down there, and I go see him, and he's like, "Yeah, so you're looking at life, 36 to life," which I already knew, but I'm like, "Damn, really?" He's like, "Yep, third strike, 36 to life for this charge. So what you need to do right now is you need to sign this piece of paper. It's a plea agreement for 25 years, and that's what we're gonna do. That's the best we can do." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 25 years?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah. I mean, do you want to do life? Do you want to do life?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to do life, and I'm not going to sign something for 20. I don't even know what this is about. I don't know what this charge is about. I don't know what the evidence is. I don't know how this came to be like I don't know anything about this case." And he goes, "Well, I mean, like, it's in your best interest to sign this piece of paper." And I'm like, "No, I'm not signing shit." So I go back to my dorm, right, and I'm super stressed out. My anxiety's up, and I'm freaking out. And all my buddies in because it was a dorm situation at the jail. So all my buddies in the dorm came up to me and they're like, "Oh, hey, what did your lawyer say?" And I told them, and they're like, "Well, who's your public defender?" And I said, "His name's Jonathan Richter." And they're all like, "Oh no, that's the worst one. That dude's a piece of shit. Oh no." I'm like, "Oh great, great. Now that I have the worst lawyer on my case." So I'm like, "Fuck." Call my dad, tell him what's going on. He's like, "All right, calm down, calm down." He's like, I know a lawyer. Let's go ahead and hire this lawyer, and we'll get this figured out." So a couple weeks later, I meet my new lawyer, and I'm like, "Man, I don't even know what this case is about." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, you're looking at life. It's 36 to life because it's 25 to life for the third strike, and then 11 years in enhancements. They're giving you 5 years for each prior strike that you have, and so that makes 35, and then a 1 year prison prior. You get a 1 year enhancement for being in prison before." I'm like, "Okay, that's bullshit." He's like, "Yeah." So, anyways, I'm like, what's this case about?" He tells me, he's like, "Well, you got arrested a while back with something like a stolen item in your car." I'm like, "Yeah, I got arrested earlier in 2012 for a parole violation, and they found a stolen ring in my car, but they never charged me for it. So now I know why, because they're going to build a case." So I'm like, I didn't know anything about that, but so that's the evidence? He's like, "Well, yeah, kind of." He's like, "The evidence is you had that in your possession, They also ran your cell phone records and found a bunch of text messages over the period of a week between you and your girlfriend talking about drug use and buying drugs, and you made some vague references to going to work even though you didn't have a job, and you were arrested with $1,300 in your pocket. I'm like, that's it? He's like, well, then they also found that your cell phone pinged a tower that was in the same city of the crime. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't sound like a strong case to me. He's like, well, technically it's not. I'm like, well, how can they charge me with all this stuff if it's flimsy? That sounds flimsy. He's like, well, what it comes down to is what's 12 strangers going to believe. He's like, I'm like, that's still though. I don't. That doesn't. He's like, trust me. He's like, this is. If we were in Sacramento County, this wouldn't even be a burglary case. It would be a receiving stolen property case because that's really what this is. But here in this county, it's a very conservative jury pool. They back the police. They believe everything the DA says, and they're going to find you guilty. I'm like, but they don't have any evidence of me like going to this house, going into the house, coming out of the house. No video surveillance. No eyewitness. No nothing. He's like, yeah, but it just comes down to what they're gonna believe, what the jury's gonna believe, and the DA is gonna tell them that he's gonna prove that you're a drug user because of the text messages. He's gonna prove that you didn't have a job, but yet you had all this money in your pocket, and and the cell tower being in the same city as the crime looks kind of bad. I'm like, yeah, it does look bad, but he's like, that's what it is. I'm like, fuck. So what do you want to do? And I said, well, I mean, like, because technically, like, yes, like I was guilty of the crime, and I'm willing to take a sentence that's consistent with or proportional to the crime, but they're talking about 25 years or 36 to life. Like that's not that's that's way the fuck out. And he goes, okay. So I'm like, let's try to get like a plea agreement. I'll take like 8, 9, 10, even 12 years. I'd consider taking, which is way more. See, the charge of burglary only is a 6-year max. The most you can get for that charge is 6 years in California. But with my priors, this is how I get so much more extra time. So he's like, all right, we'll see what we can do. So 2.5 years of going back and forth to court, trying to work with the DA, and nothing. The DA is not going to offer any kind of deal, no nothing. So I have no choice but to go to trial. My lawyer's like, you might want to take this 25 years, just like the public defender was trying to get me to do, because if you go to trial and lose, which I think is going to happen, you're going to get 36 to life, and you'll never get out. I'm like, well, as far as I'm concerned, there's not really much of a difference between 25 years and 36 to life. It's no like different to me, and I'm not just gonna sign for that. He's like, okay, and I'm like, and plus, there's no solid evidence here. Like, I think we might have a shot. He's like, well, it's your funeral, basically. So I go to trial, and going to a jury trial and being judged by 12 strangers is one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Like, it's not cool. It's very I don't even know the word to describe it. I don't want to say humiliating, but it's kind of humiliating. It's embarrassing. Um, I was so under so much stress and anxiety that I lost weight when I went to trial. Like my lawyer even said, "You've lost weight," and I don't have much weight to lose. So it was terrible. I wasn't sleeping at night. I'd wake up in cold sweats all the time. I couldn't sleep. And I'd feel like the walls are closing in on me all the time. I was getting this really bad anxiety, and it was hell. It was just 2.5 years of hell. So go to trial, and my living hell got even worse because of that. And it only took a day or two, and they came back with a guilty verdict. And I was so surprised because, like, again, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So that means if there's any chance that you maybe didn't do the crime, then they have to vote not guilty. But they still came back guilty. We even hired a cell phone expert who did some more research on the case and found out that the cell tower that my phone pinged off of was nowhere near the crime scene. Had I been closer to the crime scene, my phone would have pinged off 3 more towers closer, and that would have been proven. So we proved that to the jury still. So now I'm pretty much guaranteed 36 to life. So tune into part 2, and I'll tell you how it ended.